Yeah, yeah, yeah. Early for well, no, actually, we saw desert bees over the weekend. We did. I think
Look
they were
at you
desert
guys.
bees. They look like black flies, but they hang out around flowers. I don't know. At any rate, ladies and gentlemen, writer, author, documentarian, wonderful human being, Maryam Henein is back on the show with us. How you doing? I'm glad you got power back.
I got the power. I apologize for being late. This is life in the
Mm-hmm.
See,
jungle.
you're fired.
Did you really have a honeybee fly into your studio?
No, no. That
Oh,
was I don't know what my mom did with this hat and this thing, but I bought my mom this little bear like 10 years ago, and it was Boone Furskin, and he was like a little bear beekeeper. Um, so I thought it would be cute when you came on since you're the bee lady. So you're like,
yes.
oh, there's the bee, and here's the beekeeper. But it didn't work out. It failed.
Aw.
If there was a sad trombone, a bum, bum, ba-dum, I would have deserved it right there. How you doing, Miriam?
I'm well. I'm adjusting to you have to just succumb to like, oh, there's no power. Again, I have these UPC batteries, but the ones I have are defective, so I have to go return them. And yeah, I'm hanging in there. I found out the place I got ousted out of in St. Augustine is just empty. Just they wouldn't even give us a couple of weeks. So this all happened fast, and part of me still wishes I was in Florida.
Yeah, I'm
It,
here.
How are
the,
you guys?
Hmm.
fantastic, man. I'm awesome. I lived on and off grid in the Santa Cruz Mountains in California for a long time. And there's just up to 3 weeks where you could not have power. There's too many trees are down. The PG&E is like, look, we're not showing up until it's done raining. We're just not showing up because there's no point. We're gonna throw 12 hours guys at restoring power to 7,000 people. It is going to go out again as soon as we get it up.
Yeah.
So tough it
Well,
out. Yeah.
yeah, I'm on a WhatsApp thread with the people in this community where I am because it's very remote, and it's just like, oh, a squirrel got electrocuted on the wire again. I mean, like how many times it's like some animal, and it goes down, and such is life. Last on Easter, I didn't have running water. It's what it is. I
Hmm.
showed you guys last time the view.
Yeah, but we'll take it again.
Yeah, let me peek out the window.
Mm,
Nice.
that's nice.
It is
That's
nice. It's
nice.
nice that there's no like 5G poles. Yesterday, I was deliberating something, and I just turned left, and there was a big snake going up this sliding, just a big, but it was, I don't get freaked out because there's a snake per se, but the fact that it was like, dude, what are you doing going up the wall and just like hanging out with me? So I went on Instagram Live and just filmed it. But it's not for the faint-hearted. A lot of people come to the jungle, but they can't. Oh, there's too many bugs.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm okay with it. So what were you guys covering?
Well, we were talking about how they've suddenly discovered the source for the Pentagon leaks that they announced a few days ago that was
Yeah.
somehow just running under everyone's nose on Discord for months and months and months and months, and it's that so that whole totally limited hangout op that is. I did have before you got in, um up queued up was about PBS following suit with NPR and quitting Twitter in a huff. And my interest in this, and I would love to get your opinion on it, Miriam.
Mhm.
The outlets that are freaking out about being state funded, labeled state affiliated media, are the ones with public in their name. obviously state affiliated media, just state funded media. It's none of the ones that got tagged as state affiliated media that that openly push narratives are also that don't have public in their name or quitting in a huff. All of the legitimately state funded media outlets like CNN and MSNBC and Fox and ABC and CBS, none of those people are quitting Twitter in a huff or raising a stink. Same with, New York Times and all that shit. So is it the people that are clearly state funded raising a stink and trying to take all of the eyes while the regular state affiliated media outlets just keep pushing out the exact same pieces of unwashed propaganda day in and day out on that platform? Because other than that, like, it's just people freaking out about being called what they are, and that's kind of silly.
May I answer?
Yeah.
What I haven't been following PBS per se. I know of the new label, but what I find, having studied Tavistock and seeing a lot of these actors who are like, oh, now you're the face of the truth movement. Who the F are you? Where did you come from? So I feel that there's others that pretend, let's say, to be one of us or to be a state affiliated, whatever, and play out that scenario, the drama, but nothing actually gets resolved other than it's like we talk about it and it gives us fodder. But I don't know if that makes makes sense. I see a lot of people in this movement, in the truth movement, especially with medical freedom, that were not. It's like Sam Tripoli says, it's safe, dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of antics. There's not a lot of adulting going on, in my opinion, and it's distraction. I haven't heard of the Pentagon leaks, but I just got a 480-page download from Pfizer that's via Daily Clout, which I guess is Naomi Wolf. So
Mm-hmm.
wanted to look at that, and I have so many tabs open, and like right now I'm writing a piece on the EUA and
Mm-hmm.
looking to see why now. And in reality, there's like so much gobbledygook that I'm trying to decipher, and it's not really the end of the EUA. It's like officially the emergency is over, but yet they can still issue EUA under certain circumstances. I'm still kind of navigating to try to make sense, but the legalese is like it's hard to decipher.
Well, and my understanding of that too is that it doesn't matter that Congress declares an official end to the COVID emergency. It's the CDC and WHO and NIH and FDA that all determine whether or not there's emergency use authorization that the jabbies are allowed under. So Congress has nothing to do with that.
Yeah,
The
that's a
the
good
ending
point.
the emergency has more to do with travel restrictions and employer-employee relationships than it does emergency authorized vaccination. But I could be misinformed on that. I could be up, but that's my understanding of it currently.
No, but that's a good point. And if the WHO with their treaty are trying to issue some type of blanket emergency, you just have to ask, like, oh, what's the catch? Why now? And then read the fine print. It's too bad. Yeah, I haven't been able to find any educated commentary on the particulars. Where did Pasta go?
I'm not sure, but I do know that he had a noon Eastern interview that he was going to have to duck out of the show for anyway. So he may
Oh,
have gotten a jump on that, or he may have had something he had to deal with. I don't know.
I
I
see.
really don't.
So yeah, so back to just this topic of the EUA, that it is very interesting, and what other emergency is on the horizon, because people technically would think, oh, okay, so now they're no longer getting immunity for their jabs, but it's also been attached to the children's schedule, which we know is a tactic that is used in order to get immunity because it's on the children's, like, what are we at? 72 jabs, 48 for the little child. Oh, you're only 50 pounds. Let's just, and what happens oftentimes, what was happening with the prevalence of turning into becoming autistic is because if you have, you miss your doctor's appointment, you bring your child in and you don't factor in the weight of the child, and we're just going to give you all the shots that you missed from your last appointment, and then saturate this little body with all these poisons. Because another thing with these new faces of the truth in this movement is that a lot of them are okay with other vaccines. I know Ricky has talked about this on Union of the Unwanted, and in reality, no, we have an immune system, and this is what a ruse. What a ruse when you think of all the, early on, I was following all the EUA, and it was like 1 test, 6, 13. And so as I'm researching this, just to put in perspective, that usually they were getting 100 a year of applications. And in 2009, during H1N1, they only approved 17 EUA applications. And so for 2020, I think in 2020 it was 320 approvals.
No, I mean, that's an increase that just screams agenda. And let me ask you this sincerely. Out of the people in the community that you're kind of referring to, especially the ones that do come from a traditional Western Rockefeller medicine background, how much of that do you think is insincerity or being part of a larger agenda? And how much of that do you think is people who have just been programmed one way, who are struggling with unlearning all of the stuff that they're having to unlearn?
I think that's such a good question. And because you run into ego, meaning someone is handled or manipulated via the ego and don't realize that they're necessarily part of the establishment while pretending to be a freedom fighter. And it's difficult to discern. But let's say, because I don't want to shit on others and become that person. But I do know that people keep me at a arm's distance if something funky is going on. And
Same.
Right? Yeah.
Same. Yeah. Yeah. There have been people that have backed out of interviews on this show at the last minute after taking a better look at my Twitter, stuff like that, and better look at some of the stuff that I've said.
But not necessarily
said on the show.
It's not like you would think they're supposed to be in the same tribe as us, right?
Yeah.
I like to say, for instance, when Stella Emanuel, no, she wasn't even, Trump had just tweeted her. This is 2020. Trump had just tweeted her. I don't think he had untweeted her. And I reached out because I really liked her passion. And I was actually in the jungle. And then we got on Skype and the connection was poor. I asked her to pray. And then I went on her Facebook page and I saw the Reboff Clinic said, if you're suffering from flu-like symptoms, it's probably COVID. And I was like, what? What the F is that? No, these are ubiquitous symptoms, and no. So, but I didn't say anything. And that overnight, between the time of prayer, of us praying, she texted me and she said God told her not to do an interview with me. Really? And I said, oh yeah, may God strike me down now if I have ill intent. I said, but wait a second. God told you could interview with Fox News? Okay. So that's a perfect example. Like, is it because they don't like You could say, oh, we just don't like you. We don't resonate you. You're a nobody, which is not true. But according to the manipulated numbers that are used to bamboozle the masses, oh, look, big number, big shiny number, totally fake. But that's an example. So I think there's when let's say the doctors that are eating cheesecake and drinking beer or drinking booze on the side, are they're still Rockefeller medicine. It's a completely, so for instance, if you're going to peddle HCQ or ivermectin, it's still allopathic medicine. I personally don't believe in taking it prophylactically. You can ask others like Dr. Braun as to why the mechanism of, let's say, ivermectin can actually impede healing. I know with one person I was consulting with, we figured out that it was standing in the way of her healing because she had taken it so long. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. It's just fundamentally, let's say, functional medicine versus Western medicine. Of course, you could have a little bit of both, let's say like a Dr. Mercola that was
Yeah.
trained. And that that would be good if you could merge kind of East and West in a way.
I mean, it would be nice to have the because the advances in immediate trauma surgery that we've had. I'm walking. I mean, and granted, there's a significant amount of chronic pain that's resulting in it, but that was going to happen either way. But I mean, I've got metal in my leg, plates, screws, stuff like that. There's a nylon ball where my ankle used to be. Had that not happened, I would be, I'd be Pirate Steve for sure.
Do you have titanium? You're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
I had titanium. Did you know that?
I did. I think I did. Right when I first, it was like the first or second union of the unwanted. I think you talked about it a little bit when we were on together.
It totally changed my constitution, and I waited 4 years. It was the metal rod, 13-inch metal rod in my femur was toggling, and I had to take it out. I could feel the screws. So I don't know. There's a lot of people I've spoken to that never feel it. And so on one hand, it is amazing to have these advances. But I don't know what happened with you, but they never asked me, would you like some titanium inside of your body? Oh, wake
Right.
up and you got a rod in your femur.
Yeah, no, I woke up with an external fixator cast with the rods coming out of my leg and then a couple of bars across. I fell 18 feet off the roof, landed on my feet. Everything just sort of went, and yeah.
How long ago?
17 years almost. Yeah, 17 years. Yeah. And I was
You
told
you fell off where?
a roof.
A roof.
I was,
Okay.
yeah, there was the new guy rolled out underlayment for the roof and it was hanging over the edge. You usually stop at about 2 feet so that the guy walking backwards cutting it can see the edge of the roof. That didn't happen. I stepped off, tried to catch myself. It ended up pushing me up and out a little bit more, and then I went like 18 feet straight down on the concrete. But nobody asked if I wanted anything in my leg. No. But at the end of it, I had 5 orthopedic surgeons from Valley Medical Center in San Jose, Stanford University Hospital tell me I would never walk, let alone work again.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they put me in a wheelchair for 3 months. I was like, get these fucking bars out of my, off my leg kind of thing. And that finally happened. And then I moved into a house, I'm not making this up, with 92 vertical steps to the front door in Lompico, California. If anybody knows
that
anything,
ended up being your physiotherapy?
it was,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I had groceries in a backpack on my back. I had at the time a 14-month newborn that I was single parenting. It was all pretty wild. It was. And that was my physical therapy or rehab, was getting up those steps every time I left the house, somehow holding a kid, a cane, and 60 pounds of food on my back.
Wow. Yeah, I really, in this silent, blatant culling that's going on, this is unfortunately how us human spirits learn that there's a lot beyond the physical. And if people really realize the extent of this spiritual battle, and it's like every day, Steve, when I go to bed, I'm like, thank you, God, that my body's okay, that I didn't go to a killing field. I'm so uber aware of just at any given time, even if like stub your toe and you realize like, oh, I really kind of need that toe. You need every single thing. And it's just saddens me beyond measure, because life was challenging enough, and it's become so much more challenging because of the woke culture, because of all of the poisons that we're having to navigate. And I mean, this agenda, what a design.
Yeah. 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 And at the same time though, Mary, I really do feel like um there's people with skill sets and perspectives, and there's enough historical evidence as to how to successfully maneuver around authoritarianism and technocracy, and that we still have enough freedom loving, liberty minded individuals on the planet left to where we can have significant pushback to this, to where we can, I do believe we still have time to build some parallel systems and parallel structures, and
Yeah.
that really economic warfare is ultimately through various different currencies and things like that are what's going to do this. We're living in the collapse of the dollar right now. We have the opportunity to take advantage of it.
Right. I agree with you. And I think for me personally, at my age, and I think this, I was never close with my dad, but I think just psychologically having my dad block me, and it's like I've talked about it before, and been shut down, like, oh, your daddy doesn't talk to you, like, fuck you. Excuse me, are we allowed to swear?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. So that's not about, it's just about the psychological. If you have your own parents, and it's not, I'm not saying it's novel. I know there's a lot of people out there that have been estranged from their family or supposed friends. Um, but I think it's just kind of the footing around underneath me is a little shaky, and for me, what I'm really looking for is a community. It's like it's different if you're in a relationship, you have children, you have your little nest. Like really, like what else do you need? I'd be so happy if I had a partner and I was in this beautiful jungle, but not alone. So I've come here, and the food is way better than in Florida. The access, the care for like, oh, organic, not poisoned, even though actually Costa Rica is ubiquitous with stomach cancer, and there's a shitload of GMO and spraying and junk food, just like everywhere else. But in this
Mhm.
community, however, I find that they're hippies, meaning they're not wanting like to have a conversation and see like a chick actually like take a step back from me because it's too intense what I'm talking about. um whereas like I want to be on the front lines, like, yeah, sign me up. I Let's do this, and to be with others that like yourself, like Pasta, that are like know what's going up and engaged and using your critical thinking. And not to say, the hippies have a very high vibe and positive, and there's worse people to be around for sure, Z's. But I'm still kind of looking. I was thinking maybe to go back to Mexico, but I'm waiting. Do you know Max Egan?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm actually in the process of getting him on the show here soon. We just
That's
started.
nice.
Yeah, I
But-
can't wait.
So Max was, you're back.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to handle this problem. I got to actually jump out. I just came back in to say goodbye. I screwed up all my times, and I've been jumping around with RT. They moved me to Tuesday. I woke up ready to be on their show today, the crosstalk, but they moved me to Tuesday. Nobody told me, and I booked another show. All craziness going on. Plus, the Coinbase is now fucking with my crypto, so I might be in some serious trouble. You know,
What?
my
How
birthday's
so are
coming
they?
up, and I
How are
can't
they
transfer
messing?
funds. What's that?
Are you missing funds from Coinbase? Because that's happened to me too, and I've had to call them.
Yeah, and that was what I was trying to deal with. I said I sent over money from my Coinbase wallet to my Coinbase app, and it's not working. And usually goes through right away. It's been over 12 hours, $300. Trying to figure out what's what. So they said they're going to do more investigating and take a look, but and have somebody call me back. But I don't know right now. This really sucks.
It
'Cause I
really
have no
sucks,
money.
and maybe it's training for what's to come, because people
Yeah.
are going to wake up and their money's going to be gone.
I was telling Pasta at the top of the show, man. I was going through this with my ex all over the last week. It took us 5 days to make what was normally a 30-second transfer.
Yeah. I mean,
And I'm telling you, man, don't be surprised if all of a sudden you have crypto available, but it's only available to buy other crypto with and swap, not to transfer into your account or not to send to anybody else.
yeah.
Don't be surprised if that takes at least another day, because the exact freaking same thing happened to me this week. It was just yesterday that I was sitting on the phone with my ex in real time to make sure that it happened. Started the freaking process on Friday.
Yeah.
I got to jump off.
Okay,
Maryam, it's
Pasta,
great
good
seeing
luck
you.
sending you good juju.
Send
to
me
sort
good
your
juju.
stuff.
We'll speak soon.
Yeah.
I would say stay warm in Costa Rica, but I think we got that covered. It's
No, that's
nice
good.
and
I'm
warm
good
over
on
there.
that.
I mean, look, I moved to Florida so I can hang out with you and Nico House, and you both left me. He went to Brazil. You went to Costa Rica. Look at my view.
Wow. Where are you in Florida? Can you
I'm with
say?
my mom in Boca Raton. Boca.
Yeah.
I love you guys.
Okay,
Have a
love
great
you
day. Thank you
too.
so much,
Take care,
Vicky
buddy.
Ling, for the birthday gift too, as well. It was very
Oh,
nice
happy
of you.
birthday.
Yeah, it's tomorrow.
Okay.
Heck yeah.
Bye. Are you
All
in
right,
Brazil?
buddy.
You're in Brazil? No. Who's in
No,
Brazil?
he's in Boca
Nico is in
Raton.
Brazil.
Nico House. I don't know if you know Nico or not. Nico's a good
Oh
buddy.
no,
of ours.
I don't know Nico.
Okay, yeah, no, Nico's a good buddy, and he had lived in and around Miami for the entire time that we've all been out doing whatever. And Pasta was in LA, and so when Pasta finally gets back to Florida, Nico's on a plane to
For
Miami.
whatever reason, I thought, first of all, I didn't know that Pasta was in LA, where I've spent 23, 24 years. And then I thought he was in Florida and left for a moment. I found, maybe I
All
already
of these
said,
things happen. Yeah.
I found out, yeah, that the house that is like just empty. It's like, oh, you forced me out so it could just sit empty, like after schlepping my whole life. And I just didn't have time to find anything in Florida in such a short amount of time. Finding that house took 4 months in this crazy. And like I mentioned, Union of the Unwanted, here's $100 application to Vanguard every time you apply for a place. It's just bazonkers. It's bazonkers to see everywhere, even here, just capitalism overtaking, because everybody's kind of in this, not everybody, but a lot of people are challenged and having to nickel and dime. And that's the issue that I'm trying to have, that I'm having, not want to have, is being a brilliant journalist. And it's like I had an ex go, why don't you write for some of the publications you used to? It's like, what? Or writing the same article that I would have been paid $1,000 and getting paid $150. It's like, and that's acceptable.
Yeah, and at the same time, there's all these people who are
Yeah.
trying to, the same people who are trying to make money off of selling people lifestyle are sitting there telling you, you need to know your worth, you need to know your
Right.
value, you need to know, and you need to set your price accordingly. Well, how are you even supposed to do that when you've got people who are saying your $1,500 piece is now worth, $75, and I'll tell you what, we're going to go ahead and cut everything but the first 5 graphs, and we're going to edit some of that too because it's a little bit too over the top for what we're trying to push out right now, but maybe later we'll have you back, we'll pay you double, we'll print 6 graphs out of the 35 you submitted, and now we've got a relation. No, I
Yeah.
mean, this.
Why are there some that get away and they get paid the big bucks, and to say, so I'm going to blame myself because I don't know my worth. I know my worth. And more and more so in this age of mediocrity, that I value my worth even more because I'm a high caliber human being striving for excellence. But it's not, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to go shit on myself, a little lacerate myself. Don't worry, you're not, you have to fix your self-esteem issues. No, like, I've already done this. I'm not a kid. This is not my first rodeo. I wrote for all the mainstream magazines. When I wrote Drivel, like,
Yeah.
Penthouse used to pay me like $3,000 an article. And I'm writing way more important stuff now that is like way more mind bending. Oh, I'm going to read all this like information on nanolipids and the patents. And it's for me, it's like I have to read things over it again, and I'm trying to distill it and synthesize it and connect the dots. And I really would love to collaborate and be hired to work for, um, and it's like I want to write. I want to.
Mhm.
So let's say something like a publication like Activist Post. They don't even give me $25, but they love my writing, and
Yeah.
they will publish what I put forth. So it's frustrating. It's frustrating because it's frustrating. Say, can you give me some donations? Um, that in itself, you have to put your ego aside.
Yeah.
It's a little bit. It's not fun.
No, it's not. And look, there's a big mental block that I've had for a very long time when it comes to um, asking for help in general. When it comes to uh, the accepting the fact that because I'm not going to go through mainstream avenues for a revenue source, because this is a value for value system that the show operates on, like, it's not it the mental block is that saying this show operates on people who see value in it, and whatever that value is,
Right.
whatever form or expression it takes, that's what gets sent back to us in order to keep the show running. Yeah, sometimes it's wonderful, and we get to eat every day, and sometimes you pay bills, maybe, sort of, and then try to scramble to make up for it the next month. That's life. I don't have a problem with that, but I have to stop looking at it as a humiliation ritual, and become a little bit more comfortable with. But I'm not bullshit, dude. It really does. It feels like that every
Oh
time,
yeah.
and it's getting over the fact that we're already doing the things that generate value. We're not just coming out. We're not just shaking a tin can on a cut, in a on a corner.
Right.
Like, we're actually doing
Right.
a crap ton of work. So that is something that is not. It's
Yeah.
not, you know, being a freaking weirdo asking, saying, "Hey, this is valuable. Reciprocate."
And I think this is particular to journalists and content producers in the truth movement, for lack of a better description, but it's like I say, oh, you're a makeup artist, you get $300 an hour putting toxic shit on people's face. I have an IQ of 137 and 2 degrees, and please, can you please publish this? But if I was doing something vapid, and it's like to blame, oh, it's you don't think you're worthy enough. Like, it's not going to change anything. It's people are not valuing truth, and more so, they're not even able to discern between 80% truth, 90% truth, and 100% truth. And if they find someone who is a stickler for details and is specific and thorough, they should support that person and realize that they need support, because they're getting also, the targeted individuals. It's very difficult to explain to someone what is a targeted individual. Of course, there's different variations. I've spoken to targeted individuals who are telling me they have nanotech in their brain, that they're getting directed energy. Yeah, and of course the average person be like, oh, that person's fucking nuts. And then there's, I say they tailor their torture to the person. It's very subtle, but I know enough real journalists that are attacked, whether it's like, oh, their tech, something explodes, like something happens, that they're constantly, it's variations, but it's true. It happens. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure this happened with you. In the first part of lockdown and even leading up to it, our live streams were getting just hammered. And we were, on a number of different fronts. We were doing a bunch of free speech stuff and stuff like that. The streams were getting DDoSed. That happened a couple of times. I had never been more algorithmically suppressed than I was in the first like 2 months of COVID. If it wasn't for really, honestly, and I'm not like a crazy evangelical about the platform, but if it wasn't for Rokfin, I would have fucking starved, or I wouldn't be doing this, because that little bit of crypto every month that help keep it going. And then I was still working full time as a carpenter up until early 2021. When my boss got hurt, rolled up the business, and I was like, well, shit, I guess I really have to do this part full time right now.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'd been doing shows for like 2.5 years at that point, but it was taking up a lot of my time anyway. But I was also going to work for 7-8 hours a day building shit.
Well, in my case, having built a company into $1 million operation, honeycolony.com, and then take bullets for being one of the first CBD, lost $250,000, got shut down by every processor, got my first strike on YouTube in 2017, and then be a victim of the medic update and lose my 500,000 unique visitors a month. That's now at 6,000. And then be a victim to Operation Quack Hack and be shut down for selling vitamin C. And then January 6th, losing my other site for 6 months because Square, which was Dorsey, I don't know if it still is. So it's like, to be able to explain, I'm a successful person, but I've gotten all these bullets, and is my only source of income. And now the truth is that I hired someone that I trusted that embezzled $30,000 from a government loan. And when I say embezzle, he told me he was a seasoned marketer. But then I found out, well, he was talking crap about me. And then I found out basically that he created the company months before I hired him, and all the money that he was getting from me on retainer was funneling it out to like Fiverr in Pakistan. And what he did was completely mess up my magazine, which was generating this organic. And now I'm spending money to I'm on the border of financial ruin, and I have a $450,000 SBA loan where I'm the personal guarantor. So it's been really challenging. It's been really challenging, to the thought that I'm owned by the government. It is a 30-year, and maybe the economy will collapse, but I have these beautiful products, and I say, like, well, the government came after me for my silver, and no, it's not colloidal. It's 4,000 ppm, and I would never leave home without it. It's saved me and kept me off of antibiotics for way more than a decade. So anyway, not to be somber, but these different ways in which they get people or attack them, and it's one thing to be censored, it's another thing when they handicap your way to feed yourself.
Yeah.
And so we the people, it's just people like supporting and that are keeping me going, really.
No, I same boat. And not that I had like a multi-million-dollar company or anything like that, but I mean, all of the mechanisms to feed myself have been messed with. I constantly over the last several years, and I think that it's backed off a little bit. The last
Yeah.
major thing that I had happen was last year, where my debit card processor got hacked. And it was MasterCard's debit division through a couple of banks. And this happened the same weekend that the bank that I was using was officially being absorbed into a new company. So this is what they did to me. My account got hacked. Not only did it get drained, it had an additional several $1,000s worth of crap racked up over it before they finally shut it off. Then when I went and realized it, submitted my complaint or whatever, and was like, hey, reverse all these charges, I didn't make them. My
Right.
bank went, oh, well, we just got bought out, so we can't conduct that investigation. You're gonna have to go to the new bank, and who you have no relationship with, and you're gonna have to have them do the investigation. And so they conducted the investigation. They determined that somehow, even though I was in Las Vegas, Nevada, and purchases were being made physically in upstate New York in several different locations, that I was still responsible for almost half of those purchases. So they put like $2,800 more that I didn't spend on me, completely like debanked me as a result. Now I can't get a bank account anywhere. And there's almost three. Gomez, will you please stop shaking the table, buddy? Good dog, sorry.
It's okay.
And yeah, now there's like almost like the $3,000 in purchases that are apparently affecting the credit report I don't look at.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's very particular to you, and it's difficult to, but the point, is not to, oh, I'm just going to blame the person, or like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. No, I'm doing a lot right, and the matrix doesn't like it. Yeah, and of course the mindset, it becomes like, I have canceled PTSD. I get panic attacks involuntarily, and I'm just kind of always looking over my shoulder, and I'm working on it. Luckily, I have a lot of tools because I have a high EQ, and I've been working on myself since I was 13 years old. And of course, your mindset, but it becomes a loop, right? So there's a lot of things at play. The takeaway is that this is a spiritual battle, and maybe at the end we are alone and with our fate, um, because not everybody will understand. Or it's like, I had an ex who never has had a vaccine in his life, who's like, you've deteriorated over the years. And to me that means like, I could see like old interviews, and like, I had a lot more sweetness to me, whereas I'm a little bit hardened, even though I can bust out laughing no matter what. and I'm an empath. Like, I'm sorry, it's like there's a lot going on in the world, and if I feel it, feel what's really, when you kind of tap in. Like yesterday, I've been hanging out in this awesome Twitter space in the evenings on conspiracy theories, and they were talking about, what is evil, and that it's more like a feeling or a vibe as opposed to like the devil. And I certainly can tap into that transhumanist energy, that kind of evil, and maybe we're just attaching the word evil, and it's just non-human, and we're the food, whether it's with our louche and energetic food, or physically just all this death that's going on. But I I'm just rambling.
No, I mean, I get it, and I think that there are, okay. So, I guess evil, to me at least, is more of, um, I don't know if it's a vibe or like an energetic thing, because there are tangible physical manifestations of it that we can, observe or have happen to us. Um, and I think by any account you would consider it evil. But I don't know, maybe it is, maybe the physical manifestation of it is just a transfer of energy, and that's what it looks like on the other side of it. Eh,
Also being in a spiritual battle to try to be embodied, and use this as an example. The space, there was a woman, and she kind of just started sharing, but it had kind of like, what does this have to do with the topic at hand? And she sounded like she was a little bit drunk or on a Xanny or something. She was kind of slurring her words, and she was admonished. And then she said, I apologize, because I was like, you're wanting us to be positive, but your energy is very angry and negative in itself. So what's the takeaway here? To really self master, and to be able, like, I look at myself all the time, and that's why I'm so critical on me. But it's really developing an EQ, developing, like, my philosophy when I almost died was know thyself. And you can only, how well can you get to know someone else if you don't even know your own fucking self? If you don't know, like, I know when I'm coming across as like, oh, Maryam, like, to myself, like, you're shrill, or your your stress is letting you, just point is to get to know who you are and be a master, and take responsibility for what you're lending, because nothing happens in a vacuum, and we are all connected, and we're playing off of one another. Your energy, your words will impact whether the other person is cognizant of it or not. So I really think that's what's lacking, to take responsibility for our own stuff. And if we are in conflict, what is the objective? Is the objective like, I'm right, I'm going to use your behavior? That's what narcissists do. They'll use your behavior to justify their shitty actions, instead of, like, also nonviolent communication, speaking in the eye, instead of you did this and you did that. That's blame, as opposed to I'm feeling whatever, right? Just the underlying thrust should be resolution, kindness, not I'm right, you're wrong. And if there isn't that, then you're dealing with a narcissist, most likely.
yeah, and if you can't come to, even if you can't come to an agreement, if you can't come to a resolution that it isn't just festering with, I don't know, ego-driven bullshit, the same applies. But I do think that people can have, like, reach a mutual disagreement and walk away, not not necessarily negatively impacted. Just like, oh, well, that didn't work out. All right. Well, there's a bunch of other things that can. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I've definitely felt that way with with interviews. I felt that way with previous guests that have been on the show. I felt that about guests who haven't shown up. You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, well, okay, I guess that wasn't going to work then. You know, uh, oh well, and then just moved on with my day. Like a grown up.
Exactly. Yes. And we have setbacks. And I think also, yeah, to have men like yourself, to be responsible, to be kind. Like, I'm definitely not a feminist at all, and I do witness the dwindling testosterone that we're seeing, and it's an issue. It's part of the agenda, and it's a calamity. And I guess that I'm way more traditional, that I want to be a woman. And I think also, as a strong woman, I'm forced, or I find myself in the male aspect, because that's the irony too, right? These energies, female and male, they reside in all of us, and the agenda wants to just blur the lines and shit on the different energies that live within a person. So in the male, you're doing, and I have to remind myself to just be, and the bees help me with that. And that's more of your feminine, to just be embodied and centered and magnetize. That is a big lesson for me, because my default is like, do this. I'm like never the person to leave the homework at the last day, want to tackle something, want to solve it right away. And maybe that is more male. Actually, when I was growing up, I was very androgynous, and I look back, and I think my dad wanted a boy, and if the culture or the society was like, you're a boy, I would have went down that. I could have seen myself down that path for sure. I had a car collection. I was playing with Star Wars figurines just as much as Barbies, and I thank myself for that.
Oh, your volume just disappeared.
Oops.
Oh, there you
Sorry.
are. It's okay.
I was saying, I'm fortunate for being able to develop those different energies within myself, and as early as 2017, 2018, wanted to write an article on endocrine disruptors and estrogen mimickers, and I was damned. And then, months later, or shortly after, Psychology Today came out with, now it's like everybody's talking about, Tim Pool talks about the endocrine disruptors with Ian Crossland. It's a common thing. That's another thing with the people who they co-opt, or they capture the message, that it's like, oh, we were saying this, believe it or not, Alex Jones is not the only one who was talking about gay frogs and atrazine. I've been covering poisons since 2007.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, look, at least in the case of Tim Pool, that's somebody that's been the front lines of every like psyop and narrative management operation for 13, 12 years at this point, and just gets, funded out the ass by places like Vice, and now you're the entire IRL network, whatever. Okay, sure. But I mean, that doesn't mean that um, you can't eventually, get some of that graduated audience. But I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, it's mainstream media on the internet for people who realize the part of the mainstream media lies to them. And it's one of those outlets that are part of determining what the allowable parameters
Oh,
of
you talking about
conversation are.
Tim Pool?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I watch
Yeah.
I watch it. I watch the show, and have been for like almost 2 years, pretty much religiously. And why? Because someone was like, "Why do you watch Tim Pool? He's blah blah blah." And I'm like, he seeds the narrative with a lot of stuff. He plays both sides, and if you watch, like, he'll go on this side, and then he'll go on this side. So I like analyze it. Even his shtick with Ian is like, poses as the hippie, the free, and even Ian said at one point that they have a shtick. They play these roles, but there's a clear understanding behind the scenes, and you have to wonder this. His chickens, dude, his chickens are making way more money than Maryam. And like I would say when we were in Florida, I'd tell my roommates, Tim, his chickens are making more money than all of us combined. Kudos to him. I think also creating a coffee shop is creating culture. When I met Max in Mexico and he had a bar which now is closed down, was saying, I mean, I personally, would want to do something else other than alcohol, but regardless, it was creating culture. And if he were to stay in Mexico, and he finds another place, I will go and move there, because the people that were there were with it, cared, knew what was going on, and it was an amazing feeling to walk down, have a spliff, speak to some people, go back to my place and work, and I really, really want to have a tribe at my age. I do not want to be alone, remote. I want to be with others.
And the bougie hippies in Costa Rica aren't doing it for you?
Well, I've only been here
I've met
3
some
weeks.
Costa Rican bougie hippies, so I don't know. I don't think they're all like that, but the ones I've met were.
I don't know, bougie, not maybe LA level bouginess, but it's definitely changed since I was here 3 years ago. And if you have money, it's a great place. And if I had stayed here, perhaps, for instance, like I was renting a car when I was here under the lockdown for $800 a month. Well, I was scrambling, so I got the place before and then I found out, well, it's $2,000 a month. I can't afford that, to rent a car for $2K a month. So, now you have to buy a car, and now you have to go sell your furniture so you can buy the car. So that's the situation I've been in. And I feel like at any given point, it's like, it's so beautiful outside, then the power goes out, and it's like, it's very interesting to be humbled by the elements, pretty much.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's why one of the things that I've enjoyed about being out here in Vegas is the ability to just fuck off and go to the desert. And I enjoy like that vastness. The only time I have an issue with it is if all of a sudden like a 70-mile-an-hour wind kicks up and I'm getting pelted with sand sideways.
Wow.
Not fun then.
I found out yesterday, like South Florida is, and I don't know if is Boca, South Florida, but the floods, they're having crazy floods and crazy rains, and yeah, the weather. I've been studying HARP, and I just wrote an article on weather modification, and for years I came across HARP, but I never looked at it. And I'm reading this book now, and learning about Tesla, and whatever is in HARP is up there with CERN, and the abilities that, messing with the tomography, messing with the ionosphere. It's fascinating, and it's
Well, it's
really.
is it sound and frequency that's pushing it? Is that what they've determined? Because it seems like, or at least frequency in general, as a more general term, is the way that I've understood it. I could be
Yeah, I
off on
think the
that.
tomography is doing the frequencies into the earth and having it ripple. However, like I just learned about Operation Woodpecker, which I think was out of Russia, but I think they were bombarding, and the point is that in Russia they could affect things in the United States, and that the power is way. I just started the book, but it's way more than we give credit to. And like also like HARP is in Alaska. the fact that it's like, oh, it's 330 miles. Of course it is. These 33s that you see all over. It's just, to me now, it's like, we were here. Only some people know what is going on, but it's definitely it's definitely a pattern. It's not just crazy conspiracy theories. And like, for instance, I've said, like, George Floyd is full of 33s.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit, I think, last time you were on.
Maybe.
Because I think it was right around the time that the Damar Hamlin thing happened too, and that whole scene was loaded with 33s. And then the trans shooting that they had in Tennessee, were like, everything was 33s around that one.
I
It was
didn't pay
just-
attention to that one.
So there were 3 adults and 3 children that died at 33 something Hills Road. And they're all over at least the stuff that they showed after the fact. There were shots fired at whatever at 33 seconds, and that 33s all over the rest of the scene. It's so blatant at this point that you almost wonder if it's supposed to. I think it is. I legitimately think it's supposed to generate the kind of reaction it does from some of the more sensationalist voices in the community, because that can be pointed to as a thing that'll further discredit it. Well, if this crazy bastard's screaming, it can't be true.
Do you think also that sometimes I wonder if we're reading, a signature of God? It's like, am I just like, is it because I do pattern recognition that I'm just picking up this, or is it really that conscious? Like, I know, for instance, the media said that the riots broke out with George Floyd on 33rd Street, but that's a blatant lie. It started on 38th Street. So in that incident, it is the media specifically putting the number 33, right? Is squad 330? Is that just a coincidence that it just happens to be squad 330 and squad 320? So is it us reading into it? Because you do see, like, I've had people on Twitter take a screen grab of my hand gestures and go, why are you doing this? And it's like, what? There's different variants. And let's say with the George Floyd, they purposely design it with red herrings to take people in a wrong direction and to discredit the truth, because they'll just be dubbed conspiracy theories. It's so intricate of what's really going on.
I mean, at least with the number 33, there does seem to be some significant supporting evidence that would lead a reasonable person to conclude that there's that's a signature of sorts. But with the over a long enough period of time, at least, a couple isolated incidents here and there, I could see that attributed to coincidence. But when the coincidences only go one direction, and that one direction always leads to the same spots, seems to be less coincidental. But I do think that we're oversaturated with deliberate misinformation in terms of these operations. I think that we're oversaturated in the space with hyper sensationalist voices that don't have the intention of allowing people to form a better understanding of how the world works at mind. And that it's a challenge to everybody. It was a challenge for me as just a consumer of media growing up my entire life, to discern what was real and what was not. So it would be naive or arrogant or just stupid of me to assume that everybody else isn't going through the same sort of challenges as they make their progression through life. Just because I see something now at 45, or I saw something then at 25, I wasn't on the same part of the path that somebody
Right.
at my, that nobody's really going to be at the exact same spot on your path as you are at all times.
Yeah, and I think also yesterday in the space, they're like, oh, there's an awakening. There is an awakening, but just because you've awakened to this particular, whatever it is, truth, doesn't mean that others haven't awakened to it long time ago. Like, let's say we're talking about lost civilizations, or the fact that our history is all pretty much a big fat lie. Many have already realized that. Yes, there's a cumulative awakening that is happening as well. And I think more and more there's manipulations. Let's say, for instance, 2 days ago, I don't know if you listened to Elon and the cringe conversation with the BBC reporter, but all of the spaces, they were glitching. And it's only after the fact we got all herded to the one space that was working, which was with Elon. But it took us a while to be like, oh, that's why everything's glitching on Twitter spaces, because you're herding us to go to this. So that's an example of manipulations where, and it could be, in your case, they're messing with your tech, but then it looks crazy to the outside person. But that's what I mean, tailor the torture to you. You know that something's up, but can you prove it?
Right. And even if you could, how many people would be willing to look at, how many people in general are willing to look at a primary source document for any story, let alone yours? I mean, so
Yeah,
I
which
get it.
which in that respect, it's like, what happened with the Twitter files? Why I didn't keep track of whatever soap opera drama with Matt Taibbi, but I just know it's like, why is Matt Taibbi and whoever else, I forget
Barry
her name,
Weiss.
very exactly, getting these Twitter files? Just dump the crude files and allow us, because I know that my name is on there. I know it. And I want to see the names that were banned. I want to see where are the Fauci files? Where
They
are they?
don't exist, Miriam. They don't exist. Well, not in a form that we'll ever see, because you're absolutely right. We're not being given access to primary source information. Primary source information is becoming like a bad word now. And we're
Yeah.
supposed to believe that screenshots are good enough. And I'm not even saying that they're not inaccurate. I'm
Right.
not saying it, but it's not a complete picture,
Not enough.
and it's not journal. It's not showing me. It's not showing me anything that anyone can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt is real. So we have to take what Barry Weiss's word for it through Twitter's legal team, because it's not like Elon Musk just met him in a cafe and handed him a thumb drive, Glenn Greenwald style, right?
Right. Right. That pissed me off as a journalist. And I go to the primary source. So if I'm listening, I listen to a lot of people to keep my finger on the pulse. And if I'm listening to a show and they mention something, I go and look for the primary source. So that I can see it with my own eyes. And I think that is very valuable for journalists who actually do that, instead of these parrot. But I guess it goes back to maybe needing to educate people. I've said for a long time, to educate people to know how to watch the television, to be cognizant that there's a camera and there's a shitload of shit that's happening behind that camera that's impacting what is on the screen. Having worked at NBC, I had just come from Montreal and I was working in Burbank above Jay Leno, and I asked to do some ride-alongs. And I was personally disgusted. I was like, I can never do this kind of journalism where it's like, oh, your kid just died. Shove a microphone. How do you feel? What? Like, so sensationalist. It was such a great education. I ultimately quit. There was one incident, just to put things in perspective. I've been part of the internet from the get-go.
Mhm.
And when these different news stations started having online reporting. In my case with NBC4, it was the advertising department that was in charge of the internet producers. And it's like, what? What does advertising have to do with internet news? But there was a threat, it's like, oh, if they log on, they won't tune in. And so at first, there was this like, we don't really want this, before they fully embraced. So I was working at Channel 4, and it was during sweeps, which means they spend $1 million on their choppers, and the different networks are competing with one another. And that's when, because I first visited LA from growing up in Montreal, really being exposed to international news, and then seeing like, what? You guys are covering a chase for 4 hours on the freeway? And so there was one person who had a gripe against his HMO and was on some odd freeway in a Jeep with his dog and his cat, and stopped. The chopper was on top. He tried to light a Molotov cocktail, and then he got out and he was looking over the edge and was considering jumping out. He had a VHS tape. That's how long it was, and threw it over. He unfurled a banner regarding it. Basically, this guy had AIDS and did not get the help that he deserved. And then on national television, took a rifle and blew his brain off on camera. And the chopper pulled away, because I'm watching the feed. So I'm not watching necessarily. Oh, I think they were showing the feed. And then we scrambled to put an article together. And I left that day, and I got on AM radio, Tom Likas, and I explained what was happening behind the scenes. I was very disgusted the way they handled it. They put up a if you have suffered psychological whatever, call this number. And then the next day went into the office, and I didn't really speak to a lot of the people. And this guy comes and says, can I speak to you for a second? And mind you, Steve at the time did not have a shaved head, did not have tattoos, very, unassuming, and takes me in a hallway, and he's like, were you on the radio yesterday? And I said, yeah. He's, you could lose your job if the manager, TV station manager, finds out. But anyway, they didn't care about this guy's gripe, and it was just sensational. Nobody ever covered the story. And shortly after I quit, I was very grossed out.
Yeah. My brief run-in with a mainstream publication as a writer back in the day was with The Nation magazine. They brought me on for their election blog team. This was when Barack Obama was a candidate. And so I wrote an article after that. I was able to talk to Dennis Kucinich and Mike Gravel. Which was cool. It was cool. I think they're both full of shit,
You do?
but yeah. Well, Mike Gravel's not with us anymore, but I mean, he was Navy intelligence.
I've met Dennis.
And I've met Dennis a few times too. And it's not that he's necessarily full of shit 100% of the time, but when the Democrats needed a fall guy, especially when they were doing their, public access healthcare shit, and the Obamacare shit, they made Dennis Kucinich be the ambassador to tell everybody on the left that they weren't going to get their public option, that everybody was going to be government mandated to buy health insurance and all of that kind of stuff. He was the Council on Foreign Relations member, and a handful of other things.
He plays a role, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and really well. And that's not even to say that he didn't start out sincere. But over the course of 20, 30 years in government, very few people are going to come out of that unscathed. And I'm not even trying to sit here in judgment of the fella or anything like that. It's just this was the progression that I was on with The Nation. Then they had me look at John Edwards, and I was like, oh, this guy's a plastic face scumbag. And they're like, well, you can't write that. I'm like, what do you mean I can't write that? It's the internet. This is a blog team, right? Aren't we supposed to
Right.
be able to write? So that was the first moment that I was really starting to butt heads with them. And so the more they told me what I couldn't do, the more pissed off I became, and the more content, the more copy I was sending in that was more aggressive. And so I finally wrote an article called Barack Obama, Reagan with a Tan. And I submitted that, and they were like, "Oh, you're fucking fired,"
Because you're
And I
racist?
I was going by statements that Obama had made where he was, tickling Reagan's balls, and he was like, basically like, my philosophies are mainstream 80s conservative philosophies. It's just, it's packaged a little bit different and that kind of thing. And I'm like, this dude's the second, for all the hope and change and the artwork and all that kind of crap, this guy's the second coming of Reagan. You need to figure that out. And the nation was like, you can't tell people that. You got to go.
Yeah. I mean, that you have to work within the parameters. And I think that's what Crowder a few weeks ago or months ago was saying, that they're appearing as free, but they're still within the confines of the establishment. And so therefore they're still controlled. And I believe in, let's say, the conservative movement, the goal is to keep people in the hopium. And so if you have someone maybe like me that is and it's not to say I don't look at the cup half full, but I would give maybe more somber delivery, or not worded as well with like little sprinkly sugar on top. And I think there is an art to be able to work within the confines and succeed. I could have perhaps gone in a different direction. I often wonder, it's like, why haven't I ever been a diversity hire? So
That's
it's
funny.
but it's true. I've never played that card. And I
Yeah.
remember when I came to LA and saying, "Oh, we're hiring minorities, but you're not Spanish, you're not Hispanic," and I'd be like, "I'm pretty sure there's a lot less Egyptians in LA than there are Hispanics, when we're now almost probably at past 50% Hispanics." But yet, so I was like, well, how are you determining what's a minority? And then meeting other Egyptians that put African American to be part of a quota that's being met. It's such bullshit. Such bullshit. I mean, it is true. It's like, why wouldn't, it's just like when Chase shut me down and I learned that JP Morgan, Vanguard, Rothschild, Chase had invested, quote unquote, $30 billion to eradicate racism by giving loans to minorities. And yet when I called and I'm like, last time I checked, I'm kind of brown. How about my brown life? Why did you shut me down? We don't have to answer you.
Yeah.
Just,
Well,
fuck this hypocrisy.
100%. I hate it. It's why I don't participate in it unless I'm like really basically forced to. Do you know what I mean? I've lived off grid before. I'm looking to get back off grid as soon as by this time next year.
Are you going to move
Yeah.
out of the country or no?
No, because if I go out of the country, I can only go once, because the State Department has decided that I should not be allowed to travel outside of the country. They have refused to renew my passport since 2019.
What? Why?
Yeah.
Do you have a felon or something?
No, I do have a felony on my record, but it was expunged in 2014.
You can't get a lawyer for that?
Well, so theoretically, but I can't get an appointment with the State Department.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But no, I spent, almost 20 years in the redwoods in California, and I have an opportunity to do that again, so I will. But it's gonna suck because it's the state that it's in, but it's also gonna be awesome because of the opportunities that we have there. So I mean, I guess that's gonna be everybody's situation regardless, and I will definitely be smuggling gasoline powered tools across the Nevada border. Kinds of crazy
Yeah,
shit
I
to
mean,
do.
I think it's very important to have your community, and yeah, I wonder where I will end up. It's I'm a little bit too remote where I am, as a single single woman. If something happens and the rainy season hasn't even begun, like yesterday when the power went out, there was no rain,
Mhm.
and so it's yeah, it's a little bit rough. So what time do you end? I have to go and speak to an attorney soon.
Okay, no, we stop at the top of the hour. It's about ready to wind down. I've got the
Should
producers
I
of the show
mention
that I need
anything
to
in
thank. Of
regards to my
course.
projects?
Yes, please do. I can't believe we didn't even get there yet. I wanted to talk about the ebook, and we got.
Oh, I can talk a little bit. Oh, the understanding the mechanisms of the
Mhm.
understanding the mechanisms of the gene therapy vaccines. So I don't know if you have the link, but
Let's
I'm not
see.
on Amazon, but my book is.
Let me see if I have it in my notes here. I'd have a plug for it, but I don't have a
I did
link
send the
for
link.
it.
Are you able
Let's
to share
see.
screen? Or am I
Yeah,
able
but
to
I've
share?
just got let me go grab if it's in the email, I can grab it out of the
It should
email.
be. I hope so.
Okay. Let's go into this
So
and
I'll
check.
tell the boys and girls and hims and hers and whoever it's out there. Sorry, is that bad to say?
Not
Um,
here.
that I was commissioned to put together a protocol. This was last year, probably a year and a half ago, when I first escaped China, and went ahead. I'm a licensed functional medicine coach and consultant through the Institute of Functional Medicine, and it was uncharted territory. And I was starting to put together these different remedies, and I ended up writing 82 pages that the person who commissioned me was like, I didn't ask you for this. And I said, well, I can't offer solutions to people if I myself don't understand the problem. And when it comes to the injuries regarding the jab, that there is the mRNA, and then there's the graphene oxide, and then there's the PEG, and then there's the spike protein, and each one does something different inside the body. And so the 10-part series in some form appeared on Dr. Tenpenny's, but I put together a longer, more comprehensive version and created this ebook. It was rejected off of other platforms, but I don't even know if it's shadow banned on Amazon. I can't tell if anyone's purchased it. I also offer it on MaryamHenein.com. And
Mhm.
now I'm putting together the protocols. It was vetted by a science editor writer, Jacqueline at Dr. Tenpenny, and also was vetted by other science reporters and doctors like Dr. Ariana Love. But it's a comprehensive, another 80 pages that's not published. So I don't know if you have it to show or.
I'm pulling it up right
Oh, okay.
now. I just want to make sure that my girlfriend's account information isn't
Oh,
on
yes.
the
Okay.
thing. It just pops right up. Where the shit did that go?
So I hope that people want to know what this jab juice from hell is doing inside of the body, and to also understand that there was a lot of saline that was given out, distributed, and they had to stagger their deaths. Yeah, so
So that's an
understanding
Amazon link. I put the link to your website in the Rokfin chat, and I'll drop it in the Rumble chat right now
awesome.
too.
Do you guys get questions? Do you have people
Let's see
that are
if
out
we.
there?
Yeah, I mean we do. There's 7,000 comments in the chat right now.
Whoa,
So well, yeah, I mean live chat. There.
nice.
Let's see if we have any came in specifically. On a quick scroll, I'm not seeing
Okay.
anything pop up, but yeah,
Is it?
I
Can
will
I
get.
see it on the comments if I go to comments on
Oh
StreamYard?
yeah. Or not on StreamYard. No, you'd have to go to the Rokfin or the
Okay.
Rumble.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
because StreamYard for whatever reason hasn't incorporated in the same way that you can see, the comments from YouTube or whatever on StreamYard. You can't do that with Rokfin or Rumble yet, and I don't know why. But plug anything else you would like, and then I should thank the producers and get the heck up on out of here. I have a ton of
Okay.
crap that I need to get to for the rest of the day. Maryam, you rock though. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. So people can find me I'm back on Twitter, Maryam Henein, and DM me. I'm going to be shifting, I hope, in the next 6 months or so to do more consults and just work one-on-one on solutions rather than, sacrifice my livelihood by taking on the man. And so they can go to maryamhenein.com. I'm still raising funds support for my George Floyd movie, and I'm still working on the book. They can check out the real timeline on My Movies Plus, and they rent it for less than $5. And I don't know if you have my Give Send Go, but every little bit helps me to keep going. So I have a new ebook, and I just put out an article on the dangers of the nanolipids on Dr. Tenpenny, and I'm working on another story on EUA. So yeah, you could find me on maryamhenein.com. And I believe in an exchange. So if you want something in return, I offer this book on Tavistock by John Coleman. I titled it The Book They Don't Want You to Read. And it was only $5,000 on Amazon. So I found the PDF and offer it for as little as $5 in exchange for support. So every little bit counts, and I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you.
Heck yeah. And I dropped your Give Send Go in both chats as well.
Thank you.
And yeah, when I go back and throw some more stuff in the description, I'll make sure that everything that Mark sent me over gets added to that.
Awesome. I appreciate it. God bless, and I'll see you on Union of the Unwanted, hopefully.
Heck
soon.
yeah. All right. Well, take care and hunker down there in Costa Rica. And yeah, somebody Give Send Go Maryam a generator.
Yeah. Yes. I have to get a generator. All right. God bless.
All right. Take care, Maryam.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, everybody, that's gonna do it for the show today. I want to make sure that I thank the producers, because you guys are the only reason we get to show up. You rock. We love you. We can't do it without you.